She stole my car. She used my razor. She moved in her ex-stepsister's kid after her ex-stepsister got arrested for possession of meth. Hi, welcome to my channel. If you're new here and you like what you see, subscribe for more videos like this with random stories like this one that offer viewer no useful knowledge, but that which I have plenty of. And if you enjoy this hot mess express story, please hit the like button. So this story is about my first ever roommate who I knew in high school. She was my roommate in my first ever apartment, my first time living away from home, my first time moving away from a small town into a big city. Stereotypical story. She was a lot older than me. I was a freshman when she was a senior. She was friends with some of my friends, and then she was friends with some of my brother's friends. It was a really small school, so everybody kind of knows each other. And she was also in my youth group for several years. We had a high school and a middle school youth group that was kind of combined because we went to a really small Baptist church that didn't have very many kids going to it, so they kind of just combined everybody. And so I knew her from about 8th grade on, and then she attended our youth group and did a couple missions trips with us. And I knew her for about 3.5, 4 years, maybe longer, before we moved in together. And we had a lot of fun times together. She was just happy-go-lucky and just kind of carefree. And so you could really be yourself around her, and she was just friends with everybody. One thing that should have been a red flag to me, but wasn't because I was so young, was when I was going through high school, she would be living with one friend and their family, or with one friend and a smattering of other people, and then she would move out. I didn't really go over to those houses, and I don't really know the whole story, but she'd be like, oh, I'm living with so-and-so, I had to move in, you know, kind of quickly. At one point in my junior year, she had moved in with this one girl who I'd grown up with, both this girl and her sister. And this girl told me one time in history class that my future roommate, Jessica, had gotten kicked out of this girl's house. Her parents had kicked her out because she was living with them rent-free. And her parents came home one day and Jessica had like thrown a party with a few friends in this family's pool. And this guy was a town doctor. He was only one of 2 doctors in the valley, so he was quite wealthy for the area. The area was kind of poor. So they had money for a pool. Nobody else did. We all swam in the rivers and stuff like that. That was our swimming pool. Anyway, she got kicked out of there, and then she went and lived with this other girl whose sister I'd grown up with as well in youth group, and we were all on the soccer team together at various points. But anyway, she soon moved out of that house because she had convinced her friend to stop sleeping with her boyfriend, who they were all living with, and the boyfriend got mad at Jessica, probably for various other reasons, but he kicked her out of the house. She was just always in these situations where she'd have to move in very quickly with other people, and she was just kind of, at the time, seemed like she was down on her luck and all this stuff. She had a really rough upbringing. She had an alcoholic mom. She didn't really know her dad, and it seemed like she was trying to really struggle to make it. She was on the honor roll. She was trying to go to college and all this stuff, and always trying to do the right thing and be successful in life and move up in life and do better than her mom. So everybody was always trying to help her, especially people's parents. And when I turned 18, I graduated from high school and all that, I worked at a fruit stand all summer and saved up several $1,000s and decided I was going to move to Seattle. Jessica lived in Seattle at the time because she was attending Seattle Pacific University, SPU, and I think she was in her senior year at that point, and I was about to start school at Shoreline Community College. But I was going to get settled first, get a job in Seattle and all that. So all semester, I just found an apartment with her and moved all my stuff in, etc., etc., looked for a job. When we first moved to Seattle, I remember for a couple months prior to us moving in September, she wasn't really putting in any effort into looking for an apartment. I was, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was looking at Craigslist, I think, and all this stuff. I would bring it up with her like, hey, have you found anything today or this week? She would go, no, I'm not really worried about it right now. Well, you should be, because we kind of need a place to live. We finally found a place in, I don't know what it was called, I think it was Westlake. It had a partial view of Lake Union, and surprisingly, it was affordable. It wasn't that terrible, but it probably fell down in the next earthquake, I'm not sure. I recently looked at Google Maps, and it looked like they tore the whole place out and rebuilt it into condos. So, but yeah, I had a little view of Lake Union, so it wasn't bad. It was a 1-bedroom apartment, so we were going to be sharing a room, and my dad let me take my childhood bunk beds that I used to share with my brother into this apartment, and I was like, oh, that's fine. It'll be like having a sister. Yeah. And then when I first moved into that apartment, I was just chatting with Jessica, and we were talking about me job hunting and everything. I said, yeah, I've got $3,000 saved up, you know, to kind of add my expenses while I look for a job. And she goes, oh yeah, I'll have to borrow that sometime. And I was like, yeah, my money. I'd never see that money again if I let you borrow it. Kind of knew how messy she was before we moved in, which we probably shouldn't have moved in together. But that was the first major red flag for me, her asking to borrow money, which I refused to do wisely. I started noticing noticing that there were hairs in my hairbrush that were not mine. I had really dark brunette hair at the time, and she had blonde hair, and there were blonde hairs in my hairbrush. I'm very particular about people using my hairbrush. I think that's pretty normal from hygiene standards. I'm also kind of paranoid about people sharing like my hats or hairbrushes, because when I was in grade school, there were huge lice breakouts, and I just, no. I also noticed that there were hairs in my razor. And when I say hairs, I think you can imagine what kind of hairs were in there. And I was like, no. So I confronted her and I was like, dude, why are you using my razor, first of all, on your, and then why are you using my hairbrush? And she was like, well, I grew up with sisters and we share everything. I'm like, I'm sure you don't share razors. Yeah, we did. I was like, it is disgusting. That's so gross. That's just ripe. You're ripe for an infection or some bloodborne illness. She grew up in a household where apparently they were raised by wolves, and they were. Their mom was an alcoholic, which isn't anything on kids, but you know, at some point you need to learn that certain things are not okay, like using your roommate's razor on your. So I got really disgusted, so I threw out my brush, I threw out my razor, just bought new ones. That was kind of where our relationship started to deteriorate. When things really started to go downhill, she would borrow my clothes without asking, and these were clothes that I bought myself with my money that I'd saved up. I had been working since I was 11 years old, mostly various farm jobs. I worked pretty hard for that money. She would take my clothes without asking. The problem was, besides her stealing, was that she was a good 6 inches taller than me and about 50 or 60 pounds more than me, which I was pretty underweight at the time. She was more like an average size girl, but she would stretch out my clothes, and then she would steal my shoes too, and we didn't even have the same foot size, so I don't know. She would just stretch stuff out and ruin it, and I was like, Jessica, you ruined my clothes. You need to give me money to buy new ones. She just kept throwing in them. Well, I grew up with girls, and that's just what we do. You didn't grow up with sisters, though. Anytime I would bring up any issues we were having in the apartment, she would do that. She would just completely gaslight me and talk down to me. Oh, well, you're 18 and I'm 22. You just haven't experienced life yet. And she would just always pull that card on me. I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I know how I feel about my stuff being taken and ruined. I kind of knew about common courtesies, and I would try to communicate with her, and she would just constantly like shoot me down. And I was a little bit timid and meek at the time until I joined the army, and that all changed. To kind of resolve the clothing issue, I made a piece of notebook paper and told her to write, like, you know, what clothing items she borrowed and when, and she needed to return it by the end of the week. And I said, due date 7 days. Do you think she filled it out? No, of course not. And she was just always kind of mooching stuff off me, and as I noticed later, off other people, just to see what she could get. Okay. Another huge thing she did while we were living together was she decided to move her boyfriend in without asking. Did he ever pay rent or pay for groceries? No, nothing. She moved him in from Forks, Washington, which if you're a Twilight fan, you know it's the home of the Cullens and Bella Swan. I think that's her name. Before that, it was a logging town, and this guy was super nice. He was from Forks, and he was just moving out of his parents' house. I think he was maybe 21 or 22 at the time, and he had never lived outside of his parents' home. He just worked in, I think it was a logging mill. He worked there with his brother, his dad. It was the only job in town, I'm pretty sure, because Forks is a really small town. He moved in with us. I think he came to visit first, and then he just moved in. She didn't run it by me, nothing. And he was a really nice guy though, so I didn't really mind too much at first until they started eating my food. This was another issue because here she was again, using my things without asking, without reimbursing me, no notification, nothing. So I'd come home from work late at night and my food would be gone. I'm like, well, if I had known that, I would have stopped at, you know, some fast food joint and grabbed dinner. She and her boyfriend would just pig out on my food and leave nothing for me. And I said, Jessica, you need to pay me. I'm just not used to this. I'm just not used to not sharing. Sharing would be if you provided your own food and I ate off of that too. So I told her to stop that, and that's when she really started getting really pissed off at me and just doing little things, little passive aggressive things toward me. One time I came home from work when we were working a holiday schedule. So I worked at a store in the mall, and during Christmas season, they have you work super late. The stores are open till 11. And so I would get home about midnight. Well, I came home and went to go flip on the kitchen light. It didn't work. The lights didn't turn on, nothing. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta contact the landlord tomorrow and get this fixed. I went to go into the bathroom and I'm like, crap, you know, nothing's gonna work. Flipping on, those lights work. I'm like, I guess it's just the kitchen lights are out. I don't know if I had spare light bulbs in the kitchen or what, but I got a chair and went to go unscrew the light bulb to change them out with new ones. The light bulbs were loose. So I screw them back in and flip on the light. They go on perfectly. And then I hear this moaning from the living room. Jessica and her boyfriend are on the couch. She had unscrewed the light bulbs so that I would not wake her up when I came home from work. How inconsiderate of me to want to see where I'm going when I come home. I was just like, petty. Where was I? Hi again. The video got to be a bit too long, so I had to trim it up a bit. I'm gonna post part 2 next week, so look out for that. So there's more to come. There's a lot more to the story. I'm gonna put this in several different parts and post them weekly. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get the notification to get alerted when the next video comes out. And thanks for watching this video.
I just want somebody to talk to.